Welcome to the Guru League podcast, where integrity and equity converge in the pursuit of wisdom. We are Keturah Bartholomew, Courtney King, Zane Pierre, and Patty Sutton. We are delighted to have you join us on this enlightening journey. In today's episode, we delve into a timely and important topic, examining Pride Month through the lens of integrity and equity.
I think Courtney's muted. Yeah.
As we explore the notion of equity, we're seeking to understand how it fosters fair and just society that recognizes the rights and dignity of every individual. By examining Pride Month through these lenses, we hope to ignite meaningful conversations that promote understanding, respect, solidarity, peace, kumbaya,
And so it
Kumbaya.
is.
and so on and so forth.
Kumbaya.
Let there be peace in the valley.
So what's the
So
topic today?
June is, in the United States, it's National Pride Month.
Mm,
Yep.
Yeah.
right,
So what does
right.
the National Pride Month entail? Like, because we don't, well, I wouldn't say we don't have that here in Trinidad, but it's not something that is as popular as it is in the US. Like, maybe in certain parts of Trinidad, and maybe I'm oblivious to what's going on in that sense, but maybe not like how you guys have like banners all over the place and that kind of stuff.
Yes, exactly. And there's several businesses that have taken up the banner, I guess, to show their support for the LGB. What are the other letters? I'm sorry.
LGBTQ
Yes. Go
E
ahead.
plus something.
Yes, and I've read that the reason that there's a plus on the end is because it's inclusive of all genders, all decisions of however you want to live your life and express your sexuality.
All descriptions.
Yes.
All descriptions.
To cover it all. So I guess, yes. So those letters that are written are not exhaustive. There's like plus, there could be more.
Okay, so when we say all descriptions, what exactly are we actually differentiating to define all descriptions, if anybody?
Well,
I think
there's
it's in addition to heterosexual. Would you say, Courtney?
Well, there's lesbian, gay, bi, trans, queer, and then there's people who have, as they are defining themselves, there are new descriptions like pansexual or that are being created. And I couldn't define all those for you, but
Right.
there's some people who don't consider themselves to be they're they're non-binary. They don't identify as a man or a woman. They consider themselves just like in a neutral space. So pansexual, I'm not going to act like I know all the descriptions, but there are some
Right.
who I don't identify as a man or woman, and I will only date women, or I will only date men, or I only date trans, or so the combinations are just like there's plenty of how people
So
are now defining themselves.
so this we could say would be all descriptions that are actually breakaways from the traditional definitions of things. Yeah.
Yeah, where it's just a cis woman. So a cis woman is a woman who's born as a woman with women reproductive organs, and or a man, in a heterosexual relationship.
Okay, okay, okay.
Yep.
All right.
And so we are celebrating, or in America, it's being celebrated right now. All those various descriptions.
I see.
Mhm.
S-
And so the reason I think that it's a hot topic, a topic for discussion, is mainly because the influence or maybe the impact that it has on children and teaching children what their sexuality is and bringing it before them at such a young age.
Right.
And so, like, what is okay? I mean, is
Right.
it is and then there's many who boycott the businesses that promote the Pride Month. And so, where are we on that? What's the logic? What is the equity in that, and where should we stand as
Hmm. That's a good question.
equity?
I think also, to say this, oftentimes it is compared to uh, the civil injustices that have taken place here, like, in the 50s and 60s and things like that. So it's often compared to that, and how you would want someone to teach your child that being friends with people of other colors or accepting people how they are is okay. So I think that's kind of the vein of bringing it to children, so that they aren't treated a certain way, or they don't mistreat others because of a lack of education, if you will.
Right, right,
And I
right.
And I am
I
not a
think
part of that community, just for
yeah,
clarity. So I don't know all the
right.
information.
I don't
Okay.
know all the information either, and and as you say that, I think, there's a lot of that that's good for us to honor and respect people for who they are,
Mhm.
and to
Right,
not put our, oppress someone by what we believe.
right.
I mean, we should show everyone equity
Yeah.
and treat everyone the same. But it's just like with other things like this, the Pride Month, this community has taken the rainbow and kind of hijacked it. The rainbow, which is designated as a promise, a bow in the sky, is a promise that God will not flood the earth again and destroy the earth by flood. So now that is used to for this particular group, and so a lot of Christians and believers are offended by the use of the rainbow for this purpose.
Hmm.
And also teaching teaching diversity to children is one thing, but teaching them sexuality, I mean, how young should you be teaching children? And should it be taught at school? And should you have transgenders coming in dressed up in drag and reading story time to second graders or even younger? I mean, is that appropriate? And is that something that we should go along with? Or is there a line that's gone too far to where we should protect our children from such as this? What do you think?
And are you saying it just because the sex, just period, not because it has to do with trans? So even teaching about a heterosexual relationship at 5 years old is too early,
Right. I mean, like,
right?
how and should that even be taught in school? I mean, should that be a responsibility at home? Should the government be in charge of teaching that type that sexuality, especially if they're going to be inclusive and actually promote the LGBTQ plus I said that
Right.
right. I don't mean offense by not knowing all that exact title, but I mean, where should that be taught? And if it should be taught in the schools, should there be an emphasis on it to where there's programs? I mean, I've seen where there are programs that children are required in school to go to them, whether they want to or not, and they're promoting the pride, ways you may say, agenda, but it's like it's pressed upon them. I'll put it that way, to where the parents don't necessarily have a choice in it. I mean, like it's done, and the school is taking authority over the child as being the higher authority over the parent. So, I mean, is that okay? What do you think?
So the first thing I would actually ask, well, the first two questions I would actually ask is that, well, number one, what does the legislations actually permit? Right? Because whether we like it or not, the legislations of our country actually set the parameters for the culture to grow.
Mhm.
Without the legislative parameters, there could be anything could happen. So the culture that we have existing today has to actually have some kind of legislative parameters. The second question that I would ask here is, when it comes to identifying what is acceptable and what is not acceptable, naturally the question that arises there is, what is the reference point that we're using to define what that which is functional from that which is not functional, that which is acceptable and that which is not acceptable.
And that falls on the legislation, right?
Well, the legislation should set up the parameters. Like, but one of the things in particular that I mentioned when we actually went live the first time was that some of the things in particular that we actually have to take into consideration was where governments have actually made decisions or indecisions. They are indecisions that has actually allowed this environment to actually exist.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Because naturally, if you actually functioning from the perspective of a nation, what defines a nation would be its constitution.
Mm-hmm.
And within that constitution, every legislative system, any system of law, is supposed to represent justice. And justice in and of itself is another way of saying equity.
For all.
Equity for all.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Which means, to begin with, your constitution should actually, to be able to cater to all, the constitution should have one title to embody all.
Mm-hmm.
So, like citizens, for example, like we're all considered
Exactly.
truly land. We are all equally citizens, as opposed to I am this
Exactly.
religion and I'm identifying with that race and this gender and this community.
Right. Now, unless your nation in particular has a religious preference to actually, that the constitution says that we are a Christian nation, then we can't necessarily use Christianity or Christian principles to judge a nation.
That would be now
Constitution in
oppressive.
itself, the constitution in and of itself sets the precedent for how it should be judged. So one of the first questions that even the Christian community has to ask, because the Christian community has become, so we can safely say they've become vexed by what's going on, is that in particular something, the first thing I'm going to ask here is, was it established that there should be a Christian nation by constitutional standard?
Not by the First Amendment. The First Amendment says that the Congress cannot make a law specified for religion. I mean, there can't be a specific religion, even though it was founded by Christians.
No. So if there is no religious inclination, then Christians are now being, by that standard, Christians are actually being acknowledged by the Constitution as a sect within the society. But by general terms, we could say that the concept of citizen embodies all, which means whether you're a Christian or non-Christian, or you belong to a different religion, you still deserve the rights and the freedoms that the Constitution outlines.
Yes.
Now, this is where I personally think governments made mistakes in many nations, right? when amongst the idea of what we call citizens, which is supposed to embody everybody actually, equity for all, justice for all, when there were issues among citizens, especially like, for example, now we have the LGBTQ plus community. I hope I'm saying all of those letters there correctly. But when we have that present, they're also supposed to be another section of the society. And governments began to make mistakes when they began to get involved by stepping in to really make decisions to protect that section of the community.
Because now,
And the
if they're
moment-
protecting that section, then the same equity is deserving for any other section. So now, those who are, even the Christians in this case, deserve the same
Right.
type of attention. The Muslims in the land now
They
deserve
should.
the Buddhists, the atheists, and the
Right.
Hindus. So basically, you're saying once they start doing it for one, now they are entitled to do it for all.
They do it, they have to do it for all, because we're not doing it for one. What you've just done is elevated that section about the society, because there's nothing past to really identify the rest of the society. So usually what will take place by logic is that that section that has been elevated, they can make decisions that holds the rest of the community responsible to their opinions, but they are not held responsible to anything for the rest of the community.
Well, this now comes down to the question that we started, because we're actually halfway into the discussion here today with respect to time. Where does this land now where our children are concerned? Because this is something that not only affects the United States, but also there are movements here in Trinidad and Tobago where, and even the Caribbean at large, where persons are now standing up and saying, we do not want our children to be educated on this. We do not think that their young minds are equipped with sufficient intelligence to be able to process adequately what a transgender is, or to process the idea that you can mutilate your body. Not sure if I'm saying it correctly. And cut pieces off and go through the whole hormonal treatments. And it's as though now you're injecting a new thought into the school system. And if every thought multiplies after its kind, it means now once you start introducing this thought to the children, they are now going to start reproducing more thought after that kind. And they are now going to start thinking it is perfectly normal, and it may be normal within that sector, but with the public at large, is it something that we want our children to accept as a norm, that I can be born one gender and decide to change? Now, for those who are over 18, I respect that decision. However, where
Right.
children are concerned now, it's a bit concerning.
And
You see,
in
what-
the United States, there's some states that make provision for children to be able to make that decision over what their parents say.
Mhm.
And they
No,
can
I-
actually be taken from their parents if their parents don't go along with it.
And that's a legislative issue. That means you need
Yeah,
to
it
lawyer up.
is. It
Some
really is.
lawyers, because the thing is,
Yeah.
if you, even if the Christian community, the Muslim community begin to complain about not wanting this, they're just going to sound like little brats. You know, if you
Yeah.
if you don't like how it's working, you have to get a lawyer and get it changed, or homeschool, or, like I know you all had talked about no longer shop there, but I think it's going to be like, because it is the legislation, it's going to be the responsibility of that individual parents or those parents
Mhm.
to instill the mindset that they want their children to have, unless you're going to get a lawyer and get the law changed, because
You have to.
every school district is self-determining. They can do, you vote for
What
the
they
people
please.
what they please. They make their laws. And so if you don't like what's going on in your community, you have to change what's happening in your community and, do that through the law.
Well,
and it
for
will be
people
necessary.
for people who aren't really familiar with what some of it looks like, do you want to show that video clip that you have from one of the local stores here from
So let's
Target?
see.
Just happens to be Target.
Target's gonna
Just
call
it was random.
It's random, yes. I mean, they were a hot topic, and in particular, people were talking about Target. So
There we go.
this is the display.
think Target is just a business, and they're like about their Skrilla. That means money. And so, look,
Mhm.
if the Pride supporters have the cash, we're gonna sell the clothing. They did the same thing for Black History Month. They did the same thing for Women's Month. They're about their money.
They're about their money, but they lost a lot of money when they came out with this, with the Pride. But yeah, their profit margin dropped drastically, and that's why I don't know if that's why this particular display is not huge, but all of a sudden it got real quiet about it, whereas for about a good week there was a lot of screaming going on. It was like, don't shop there and boycott. But there's a lot of businesses that are supporting this the Pride Month.
I mean, if it's your business, I think that
Yeah.
you have the right to do what you want with your business. And if you
Yeah.
don't like what that business is doing, then you get your essentials
Yeah.
elsewhere.
Yeah.
Yeah, it'll come down to that.
So what we're looking
Yeah.
at here now is that the market at large, for this is how I see it, right? Just like how Courtney, you were saying that different businesses kind of like ride the wave. Where's an opportunity to make an extra cash, they do that. They're not like a church. I think where Christianity is concerned versus the agenda of the Pride Month and so on, in the same way, you have the right to determine within your organization what takes place. As a Christian church, they can determine whether or not we're accepting to this, and this within your premises. You don't have that jurisdiction. And it's not that I'm singling out Christianity here. This is as it relates to any religion. You don't have that authority unless it is established. Like, you can't go into an Islam nation and have this taken place because the Islamic nation is governed by the terms and the conditions of the Quran, for example. So it's understood every citizen is pretty much in agreement by covenant to whatever the law of the land states there. But whereas, like in the United States and even in Trinidad and Tobago, where our legislations are not religious, we don't live in religious states, then no one religious sector, which is one community amongst a myriad of communities, has the right to come out and say, we don't want this in public or we don't want that in public. That, I think that's going to cause a lot of chaos. What we have the right to do, however, is to shield our children from what we don't want them seeing. Like, you don't take your child to a strip club, do we? Because we know what's taking place inside a strip club. Or you won't take your child to a bar because we know the agenda of the bar. So in the same way, everyone and every business has their right. This is how I reason this out here. If equity for all is like the baseline, then even as parents, as Courtney was highlighting a while ago too, we have the right, if we don't appreciate what the government is doing here, there, take your kids out of school, send them to a religious school. We, like in Trinidad and Tobago, we have different schools run by Catholic, we have Muslim, we have Hindus, and no other religion has the rights to come into like an Islamic school and say, I don't want my kids learning this. And I don't want my kids learning that. I can't send my child to a Catholic school and say, I don't want my child saying a Hail Mary. Because it is an understanding that within that organization, these are the rights, these are the established guidelines. But now where the government is concerned, where taxpayers' money is concerned, this is just my reasoning process here. I think that they don't have the right to push any specific agenda. So you cannot teach the child that Christianity is greater than Hinduism. Neither is Hinduism greater than Christianity, and neither is this sect greater than that sect. I think where every taxpayer dollar is concerned, equity has to be established by the legislation.
Yes.
I agree.
Mm-hmm.
At the end of the day, it might require some sort of constitutional reform in a way.
Mm-hmm.
Not in a way. It definitely requires constitutional reform because if we actually take into consideration equity for all here, as Keturah is saying, then if there is no reference point, a religious reference point, then what is good for one is good for all. And it's either everyone in particular back down or everybody given the space to demonstrate themselves.
Mm-hmm.
So just if we're
Right.
taking that into consideration, everybody in particular given a separate space, then legislations need to change to stop people from certain communities to entering churches, like people from the LGBTQ plus community to enter a church and hold the pastor responsible to accepting them.
You can't do that.
That has to change.
Yes, you can't.
Right? Because if it is equity for all, then everybody should actually have your own parameters. Govern yourself within your quarters.
Yes.
And if anybody steps inside it, then we have imposition. But as it stands right now, we're standing squarely in governmental interference that created a bias in the society. And now there's imposition by law. And those kind of things in particular, if anybody check the history, where there's impositions like that, and the law is backing it, it's going on into one direction. It's going on in one direction.
Yeah.
Because now you're showing a bias towards this particular people over another. That is going to lead to one path. So basically what you're highlighting here is that the problem originates rather with the government as opposed to the people, because those within that
sets the parameters.
Those within that sector as well, they deserve equity as well. I mean, they don't deserve to be treated as though they are like parasites, or like how some communities isolate them and treat them as though they are causing the nation to fall. They have the same rights you have and same rights that we have. So they also deserve equity, which is what I believe they're calling inclusion now, but not where they are lifted above another. There should be a line where everybody is, as and you started saying where everybody is now established as citizens of the land, as opposed to
they'll come back to
because
citizens.
I can't go to a certain organization and expect favoritism because of my religion or my gender or race.
Absolutely.
Now, that's unfair.
if we function by civil law, then it has to come back to that, which means in simple terms, if the Bible can't be in the school, nobody else should be there either. Let's let the civil law in particular establish what exactly is allowed within the school, and it stays right that anybody else, you need to go outside to get that education.
And
All right. Well, this has been a great discussion, and we're pretty much out of time. So come back and watch us next time on the Guru League. We are glad to be here. And if you have any comments, throw them at us. And if there's any topic you want us to cover, let us know, and we'll see about that. You can find us at
on Facebook, Guru League.
On Facebook.
All right. And also, what about the website?
A massive.
You want to
You
get
can
a
put that in the
website?
comment section.
Yeah,
Okay.
the website is actually in the comment section, because the Guru League is actually under the International Institute of Pneumatology. So you could always go to www.internationalinstituteofpneumatology.com to actually find relevant links and find us on Facebook as the Guru League.
Boom.
Boom.
Bye-bye.